Welcome everybody to episode 8 of HorseShow360 podcast. I'm here with my co-host Mike Belisle out there in Toronto. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, HorseShow360. Tune in to all your podcast platforms on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel, HorseShow360 podcast. We hope you all are enjoying all of our content, and we hope you keep following. This episode 8, is about spectators in our sport. And are spectators good for our sport? Are spectators bad for our sport? And everything having to do with it. I mean, it's the ongoing conversation, Mike, right? How do we get more spectators in our sport?
Yeah.
And are they a positive thing? Can they be a negative thing? I think most people, the general consensus will say, how could it be a bad thing? But when you're looking at it from the organizer's perspective a little bit, you got to remember that there's so many other variables that go into it and complications that spectators can actually cause for a certain type of event. So
For sure.
you have to
For sure.
factor in a lot of things. I mean, in general, what's your general opinion on whether I mean, of course, we want spectators. We always want
Correct.
spectators.
Yes.
They create such an uncomparable atmosphere for a certain type of event. But, in general, there's a lot of things that go into having spectators that complicate certain events, don't you think?
Agreed. It's very complex. Obviously with the spectators, as you said, it's something we want. As a show organizer, I think it depends on what kind of event you're basically producing, right? If you're running a smaller show, that maybe gives the wrong perspective to an audience that might come, and we kind of struggle with this, right? Is do we really want to promote this event and have spectators come, and then they come and it's not quite the highest level of the sport, so they're not getting the full experience, and then will they be a repeat customer? So it's a hard struggle. So first of all, I think the big thing is what level of event you're running, what they're going to see, and then trying to decide, as you said, there's a lot of things that come with having spectators from a show organizer standpoint, in that you have to organize the ticketing, you have to organize how they get into the event, and just lots of factors. So I think it's good for the sport. I think for the sport to grow, we have to create more awareness and make it more accessible. But that's been an uphill battle for a lot of years, trying to really get it more mainstream for the everyday person.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like in general, spectators are amazing to have, but like you said, it complicates a lot of things of the event. People just think that that's sort of like gravy income for an event too, like selling ticket sales, but it really does complicate it. You have to increase your security. You have to increase your, um, the people that
Staffing
help
for flow, yeah.
staffing for seating and ticketing and entrance and all of that, increase your concessions. Like there's a whole lot of those variables and everything, which I mean, a lot of events don't want to deal with. There are some events that spectators just make in general that incredible. Like
Yep.
for instance, about 6, 7 years ago, we had the idea of putting a Grand Prix during the Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event on Cross Country Day. Now, on Cross Country Day, they have about 40,000 spectators that come through that event, through the trade fair, watching the cross country, which is
Such a
so
thing
unique
if
and special.
everybody hasn't experienced it, it really is like, I mean, the first time I ever saw it, I was like, wow, equestrian sport other than the major championships could ever be like this. And the amount of people that are coming that are horse knowledgeable people, and it's amazing. It's electric.
Minus the Olympics, I mean, there is nothing comparable. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't care where you are, the spectators at this event are so knowledgeable, they're so equine oriented, regardless of what discipline they're watching. Because 3-day, obviously, you have the dressage, you have the show jumping, you have the cross country, and then you add, a meter 60 highest level caliber riders for Grand Prix on that evening. It gives those spectators an opportunity to go from cross country day, do their shopping, have a couple hours, stick around, watch the Grand Prix on Saturday evening, and literally, like, it's the most unbelievable home run in our world. I think that there is not, and I know we help organize it. It is owned by EEI, um, and there is not a more special Grand Prix in America. And I know we organize other events that are amazing, different types
Sure.
of events, but you cannot recreate what the Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event has created in that Grand Prix for Saturday evening. I mean, we
Yeah.
have 10 plus thousand people sold out every single year since its inception, plus hospitality areas, plus. And the atmosphere is just uncomparably electric.
For
And
sure.
so for that event, which is so heavily spectator based, the entire event relies on spectators. The spectators literally create the entire atmosphere. I mean,
Correct.
we
Yep.
could almost, I know we don't, but we could almost put on a bad event and it wouldn't matter because it's so freaking
Agreed.
cool. So that's one event where that's really special. But I think it's really important what we did there is we capitalized on an event that already had that loyal fan base,
Yes.
and we just made it a little bit better. But not better in the regard of like doing something better, but just adding an additional event to that that those spectators and fans enjoy and love. And incrementally we've kind of like increased the prices, but that's just natural because of inflation, because also we've raised the level. This year
Yeah.
coming up, we have a 5-star. So it's the highest level. We're going to have the highest level of riders, like outside of like another 5-star or the Olympics or championships. Like these people, are going to get to see the best of the best. So the show is going to be better than ever. So, but that's an event where when you answer the question, like, are spectators good? Are they bad? Does it complicate things? That event, all the answers are, of course, it's good. No, it does not complicate things. And yes, it's mandatory for the atmosphere. But then
Yeah.
you have like other events where you're like, can we handle spectators? You know,
Well, let's go back to the actual Land Rover event, right? Thankfully, we run the sports side of the show jumping, and all the other stuff is in place. So it's, thankfully that they handle all the spectators. I forget what the number is. I think, it's like over 100,000 over the 3 days, maybe.
I
So
think
it's a lot.
that's a little exaggerated. I think it's like between 80 and 90,000 on average, I
Okay.
think.
A lot of people,
Close.
but thankfully we don't have to manage that part of it.
No, the EEI does an incredible job at,
Correct.
but they're experienced at doing that. This event's been going on for 30 years plus, and they've got their routine when it comes to that. And the thing about these spectators at the Land Rover, I mean, they're diehard. I mean, these spectators, no matter what, will sit through rain, wind, cold. It doesn't matter. And I appreciate that so much because it literally makes the atmosphere better that these fans are so knowledgeable and so into it. Because I remember a few years back, we had a Grand Prix where it started pouring.
Mhm.
And I remember standing at the in gate, looking at the stands and noticing all the spectators, literally, they had their raincoats ready, every single one of them, and they just went like this with their hoods and went on with it.
Yeah.
Did not care. Not a single spectator left the
Gritty.
stands
They're
because it
really
started
gritty.
great, and it literally added to the atmosphere, it was really special, and I'm really excited for this year because it's a 5-star. I know EI has worked so hard, to get it to that level over the years, and, I'm just excited for it because now it really is the highest level. We really will have the highest level riders, and these fans are gonna be treated to something extra special because we're
Mhm.
talking $400,000 Grand Prix. I mean, we're talking the real deal. So
Yep.
looking forward to that. But again, that's a major spectator event. And I think one of those ideas is capitalizing on events and venues that already have sort of a built-in fan base is important for our sport because our sport
Yes.
is not mainstream. Like, it's not like
No.
football or basketball or baseball or hockey where people are turning on the TV. They can readily see it on ESPN or CBS or NBC or these Fox sports networks.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Huge point.
it's not a staple in your on your couch in your home. Um, and it's our job as organizers to try to figure out how to get our sport out there to the public. And I think one of the things is, one of the good questions to ask is our sport desirable for the general public in general? Like, what about it can get better? What about it can get more efficient? What about it can be more presentable for a spectator? Like, when you're
Mm.
watching show jumping, is it too long? Like, what's the perfect number of horses in a Grand Prix that is gonna allow people to sit there and really feel like they're enjoying what they're watching and they're not getting bored? Uh, what type of Grand Prix format is gonna work for them to comprehend it and understand the sport, in general? Like, I feel like when you're watching, like, basketball and football, like, let's use that for example, like,
Yeah.
I don't know all the rules of football. I don't know all the
No.
rules of basketball, but I love watching it, or yeah,
Well, you know the
you know,
base rules. It's not that complex, you know?
you score a touchdown, you kick a field goal, like, they know that the premise, and even people that don't know as much as me in those sports can watch it and be like, "Oh, wow, they scored a touchdown," or, "Oh, wow, they did this," or, "Wow, they did that." Same thing with basketball, right? So, like, I think that the
That's a good
basics.
point. Yeah, but that's a good point, right? Basketball and football, you can understand. I'm sure in your lifetime and most children, growing up were able to have a horse, I mean, a football or a basketball in their hand at some point, maybe played, with a group of friends. And that's why it's very difficult later in life to introduce people to something that is, the accessibility of being around a horse, understanding a horse, falling in love with a horse, touching a horse. It's so minute of the people that are able to do that. So they can't relate. So that's one of the big things. I think we have to go back and start early and make it more accessible. Again, there's lots of layers of this. There's the cost, doesn't make it easy for anybody. That doesn't have the means to be able to touch a horse or even be around a horse to get that connection, which is a big thing, right?
But I think for me, this might be a little controversial is probably not the right word, but something along those lines. Like, my opinion is this, and I think this might surprise people. Everybody always wants to bring new people into our sport and expand our audience, right?
Yeah.
My brain doesn't go there. I, in coming up with the idea with the EI about incorporating a Grand Prix into that pre-existing event that had a fan base, my point is that I personally think it's better for us to capitalize on the existing equestrian network that exists. The
Mhm.
people that already live and breathe horses, equine, ag sports. Like, I think that needs to be our goal right now because I genuinely believe for us to succeed, in opening up our sport and everything, there's enough of those people in America, in the world, that once you love horses or ag or something along those lines, you can't get it out of your system. It's ingrained in you. So,
Yes.
how do we tap into those people first? Like, we have to focus on those people first. The fans, the spectators, the people that enjoy equestrian sports in general. But so for me, like, I think we got to capitalize on those individuals first. Like, I want to stop focusing on people that are like, how do we get people from outside our sport to learn more of our sport? Like, no, let's just make our events more special now with the people that are already already interested, and I think there are enough of them. So when you look at it that way, that's how the Grand Prix at the Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event became established. To be honest,
Yes.
that's how my idea of approaching Nikki Walker, the Stronach Group, and First Racing about doing an event that came to fruition this year for the first time in LA at Santa Anita.
Yes.
Because I went to Nikki um, 4 or 5 years ago and said, "Hey, like the original idea was let's do a Grand Prix," and this is a little out there. This obviously couldn't come together, but it started the idea. Let's do a Grand Prix on Preakness weekend on the infield during the Preakness
Yes.
Stakes
Yeah.
because they
They
managed and
draw
ran
such a
and
big
owned,
crowd.
or
Yeah.
yeah, the Preakness up until that point or this point. I don't know the details around it, but anyway, that was my idea originally of approaching Nikki about it, and I think everybody loved the idea. It was just like logistically, how do we make this happen? And so over
Yes.
the years, the talks continued, and finally, the idea came together to produce the event on the infield at Santa Anita.
Mhm.
And um, episode 9 of our
Yeah.
podcast is going to be our 5-star recap of Santa Anita. So I won't get into it too much, but in general, we can talk about the spectators that go with that event
Yes.
and what we tried to accomplish. So my idea of that was tapping into a venue or venues that already had pre-existing equine, whether it be racing, doesn't matter, racing, 3-day dressage, show jumping,
Equine
Western,
element.
doesn't matter. Equine element, and racing, of course, is horses. I mean, Santa Anita already has 2,000 horses living full time on that property,
Okay. Well,
trained
that's
every single morning. So already has sort of that equine background database. People enjoy coming to watch racing and stuff. So that's where that idea came from. Let's tap into networks that already have a big fan base, whether it be any kind of equestrian. And that event came together incredible. Like I said, we'll do our 5-star recap on our next episode, so stay tuned. But let's talk about a little bit, Mike. What did spectators look like at that event? And we knew that spectators for that event for the first year
yeah.
complicated things.
I think for
Like
any event.
we couldn't just say first year like the invitational at the Land Rover. We couldn't just say we knew that it was going to work. Like
Mhm.
creating the flow of how the spectators were going to go, the concessions, the amount of bathrooms, the whole system and flow of how that would work. The bleacher systems, because we didn't have it built in. We weren't using the grandstand. We had to build and deliver seating for them. And this was a first year 5-star event. Yeah, it was a very premium event, as it
Sure.
should be. First Racing just went absolutely to the nines on this event in every way they possibly could, and as they should have, and it was incredible in every
Yes.
way. Um, do I think the spectator experience can be expanded on now that we got year 1 out of the way? Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think that can be rethought for next year and improved upon. But I think the spectator experience for that event, we had the best riders in the world,
Yes.
you know? It could have been better.
For sure.
Um, but also, is it the type of event that we want a lot of spectators? I don't know the answer to that
Yeah.
still.
It's what level of spectators and for that type of thing, what's the right price, for the ticket. And like you said, again, it comes down to it's such a diverse level of a spectator, and then, I mean, there's no secret we have VIP hospitality. But I just want to go back to, like you were saying, how did that event go from a spectator standpoint? Like you've mentioned First Racing, they were pivotal in the event and making it happen and working with that team. I know you guys worked with them a lot more, but man, they knew their clientele and they knew, how to flow the spectators through their events. And again, not sparing on any detail, signage, all the things. It was amazing. Like we were ready for huge numbers. But, there was a person on the team, they were always asking because it was a new venture for them in that it was in the show jumping portion of equine sport. And they were like, okay, well, when are the people going to come? They thought, Wednesday, the people are going to flow through the gates and they're going to come watch, basically all the warm up or welcome classes and all those things. And there's just going to be spectators everywhere. Maybe eventually that might happen, but that's very hard, right? They want to come. Most of the spectators are going to come, other than the mothers and fathers and family members to watch the people ride. The spectators are only going to come for the big classes, and it kind of happened that way as well as we described it happening, right? The welcome class, night class that we had some people. The VIP tent was, attended, but not overly attended. The bleachers had some people in it, but man, when we came to the Grand Prix on Saturday night, the tent was electric. Everybody was there, and the bleachers filled up somewhat, and not packed, but it was a good first attempt. But again, it's not a Wednesday through Sunday daily, viewed sport. It's just you're not going to be able to do it because again, if you try and promote those type of days, people are going to come, and you only get one chance to get a first impression, right? So if they come and watch an event that maybe isn't that interesting, then they're gone. So it's
Yep.
difficult.
Yeah. No, and again, it's the question of deciding like what event is appropriate that spectators will enjoy watching the event, feeling like they got the value for the dollar, of the quality of competition that they're watching, also the quality of the seats that they're sitting in, the amenities that they also get. Because if you're spending money on an event, you have a level of expectation. Okay.
Yes.
If you're spending $5, you have a certain level of expectation. You're spending $50, you have another level of expectation if you're a spectator. If you're spending $100, you have another level of expectation. If you're spending $5,000, you have another level of expectation. So,
Yeah.
all those things have to be considered. The event has to consider those things and how much money you spend into providing them with that expectation. Um, and making sure that they have the things that they expect and are comfortable as well at every level. And then you get into the question of like the cost of being able to accommodate them versus how many you can sell and what's that balance? Because like anything else, do you want to lose money to create the atmosphere? Do you want to break even or do you want to make money to create that atmosphere of the
Correct.
event?
Yeah.
Now, Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event, that's 100% needed. It's worth the investment. You have the built-in grandstand of the Rolex Stadium. All that's in place, right?
Yes.
Santa Anita 5-star, you have the absolute best riders on the planet coming, so you created a good sport, but you have to build every piece of the infrastructure where the
Yeah.
main arena is. You have to bring in all the concessions. You have to bring in all the bathrooms. You have to hire all the staff. Yeah, I mean, you have to do everything from ground up
Yes.
to create it. So then you're weighing, well, how much is too much? How many spectators is too much? How do we sell to those spectators? What's the right price point? And yeah, like you said, um, I thought it worked well enough for year one.
Yes.
I would say for all intents and purposes, it was sold out. I believe we sold about 1,000 spectator tickets, but we had hundreds and hundreds in the hospitality areas and the rider areas and everything. Like the event had an amazing atmosphere. So we created what we
Definitely.
wanted to create for a first year event. Um, and then basically you have the most of the most in the Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event. You have sort of that middle ground of sort of what I think LA and Santa Anita was, of not as many thousands, but it still had a great atmosphere.
Yes.
And the packed hospitality areas, the rider areas, and the bleachers created that atmosphere because of the shape of the arena. And then you have events like our other events. Okay.
Mhm.
Fort Worth has been amazing for spectators. But again,
Yes.
we that's an ag community. We have
Yeah.
World Cup finals there in 2026 that stadium can hold 10,000 people for 9 sessions, and Dickies Arena is gonna be the most unbelievable atmosphere we could possibly imagine on an indoor stadium.
Agreed. Just what
And
was created, at the last couple shows, which, is not anything to that level, but they're very receptive to, the horse port and show jumping, which is awesome to see.
yeah, every year we've sold 3,500 tickets, and that's not sold out, but it's a lot to create an incredible atmosphere. So that's one example as well, and that community rallies around it. So I think that's another event that needs it because, without it, it would just be a normal event, and people are really willing to come and spend, 40, $50 to watch a Grand Prix. So we've kind of hit that sweet spot. They feel like they get what they paid for. They're really close to the action. So you're giving
Yeah.
spectators that feeling of adrenaline of having those horses literally jumping feet from you, which you can only really create on an indoor stadium. And then you have other events like our other events, like our June events that have 8
Exactly.
competition rings, where I don't wanna say it, but spectators actually complicate things at that event.
Well, and it's
They
very
get
hard to
lost.
get them. Yeah, I mean, and that's to tie those 2 in to Texas, and they're a good comparison, and Lexington, Kentucky in June is one of the points I had written down here is accessibility, right? Most of the time events are run in rural areas, outside of the town, the city limits. So it makes it very hard to attract somebody to come to the event when it's kind of difficult to get them out there, and it's hard for them to get out there. Maybe they don't have
So
transportation.
how do we do that
So
better, though? I think that's what people wanna know, like, how do we open our sport up to the
exactly,
masses and,
100%.
like so how do
But that's why Texas does well, right? That's why Texas gets people because they can walk across the street and it's close and whatever. And then if you tie into Lexington, we had this conversation actually. I think it was in the fall. It was like, well, why we're right in Lexington, Kentucky. There's lots of horse people, but we just don't get spectators for the 2 and 3 stars. We don't. But again, there's so much going on in the city limits of Lexington, Kentucky, and it's hard for anybody to come out. And it's how do you draw them to come and see it? Unless you're getting buses in there to pull them out.
Well, I'm asking you, what's your how? What do
Yeah,
you
well, that's I think the only way you do it is you go to the university, um, you go to University of
takes
Kentucky,
effort, a lot of effort, time.
100% and cost. And then it's like, okay, we hand out tickets, let people know, build awareness, which all costs. And then you put the bus out front and say, it's going to be picked up here. You can load the bus to come and do it. Go to local schools, kids.
But
But
you just
that's
said
all been
handout
tried.
tickets. You just said handout tickets.
Yes. There's not going to
And
be,
but
there's
you
not going to
then
be
if you're
any
doing
issue.
that, this is the balance, and people need to understand, like, why don't we do that at a general event, an everyday hunter jumper horse show that has, that everybody's competing at? Why don't we do that? Why don't we just go hand out tickets to have spectators for the Grand Prix of all these events? Well, we discussed this. Like, if we were to hand out 1,000 tickets, let's say, which
Yeah.
that's a lot. 1,000
Yes.
people are a lot of people to manage. So why don't we hand out tickets and have people give people free admission to every single event and everything? Well, it gets complicated. Like, you have to then prepare your concessions. You have to have staff to direct them and accommodate them, make sure they know where they're going. You have to have staff to park them, to direct them. You have to um, then elaborate on your production of your Grand Prix so that they can watch and be entertained. And just because they're coming for free doesn't mean you just don't do anything, like we have to then prepare and invest in that. And when you're operating a multi-ring horse show, trying to accommodate thousands of exhibitors and everything, like,
Yes.
unfortunately, the focus just goes a little bit away from that, and it ends up costing a lot more money
Exactly,
in
and does
order
it
to
create
have an
revenue?
accommodative
No.
it.
Yeah, does it create revenue? Yeah, minimal compared to, and if let's say we bring in 1,000, but this is the other issue, right? Who are we doing it for? We doing it for us as organizers, bringing in that 1,000 people? Because I don't really think, and I'm talking at the 2 stars championships and bigger stuff, that you want a big crowd, but do the athletes really care if there's 500 people, you know, watching them during a 2-star Grand Prix or a 3-star Grand Prix? I don't know.
I mean, I know you're gonna say no, but
Well,
if
you know
they're
more than me, I
there
don't ride, but
if they're there,
yeah,
the athletes and the horses love it. You know, when they feel the adrenaline of a crowd watching, there is nothing like it. It is like any other sport, and they thrive from it. So
but
the answer is
example
yes, but
okay, but example, we're in the Rolex Stadium, and you get 500 people, what difference is that gonna make?
yeah.
Like, how big that is. You think? 5 well, okay, maybe 500 is not a good number, but 500 kind of, to me, you can't even see them in there. That's kind of why we change it up a lot of the time, to create more of an atmosphere. But yeah, no, I wouldn't know, but I mean, that makes sense as an athlete if it
So
makes a
what
difference.
does so, let's get back to, like, do we want spectators? Why do we have spectators? Why we don't? And I think you just answered it. I think spectators in general are, of course, a great thing for the sport. We want them, 1.
Mhm.
2, you can't always have them, but when you can have them, what do they do for the sport? And they add atmosphere to the sport. And I think in general, we need to encourage spectators to come to our events, the
For sure.
events that can support them to create atmosphere, to create that energy of adrenaline and sport. That's what spectators do for our sport. But I think we need to make sure we tap into pre-existing equine networks and communities that are willing to come spectate and watch. I don't think, and this sounds crazy because horse sport is huge. I don't think we need to create trying to broaden our horizons and get all new people into our network. I think we need to focus on the ones that are already here now, and that will exponentially, incrementally bring new people in. When people see that there's a big following, when people see like, oh God, why are these people so invested in these sports? And then they'll be attracted to it. I think we're putting a lot of focus on trying to get new people in rather
Yes.
than cater to the people that are already here. And we're missing a lot of those groups. And that's why we chose to do World Cup finals in Fort Worth, Texas,
Yes.
because we realized the community really rallied around ag sports, regardless of what the discipline was. And I
Yes.
mean, okay, 2026, April 2026, World Cup finals. You can purchase your tickets now. We're in the pre-sale stage, but um, I'm banking on that. I'm
Yes.
banking on everybody wants to come to. I mean, the town is known as Cowtown.
For
But
sure.
that's in like the stockyards, everything. Like everybody that is ag oriented is going to enjoy that event because you're going to get the best of all equestrian worlds. And that's what we have to tap into. That's how we're gonna get major spectators in those seats. Like,
Mhm.
let's just focus on that first. Let's not try to,
Yeah.
like, do all these crazy ideas that other sports are trying to do and everything. Like, there's a reason why that's not working.
And I don't feel like it's I make sure I just wanna make it clear, I think spectators are important, and I want them to be at any event we have. I just think it's every event that I've been part of organizing, I've found that you always have to do, other than what you're offering in terms of the sport, you have to do 1,000 other things to attract them. You need, look at all the other places. You have to have a carousel, you have to have a bouncy house, you have to, nothing that's, tied into the sport. You have to have all these other entertainment things. They have them amazing trade shows, all that stuff that brings people in too. So it's like, okay, like you said, back to the basics. That's where we need to go, back to the basics, make it more accessible, get more media coverage into the people equine, not so much the general public, but really focus on whatever discipline it's in, because there's not a lot of cross publication, right? You have your eventing magazine, you have a dressage magazine, you have a hunter jumper magazine, you have a driving magazine. Why there's not a lot of cross advertising? Like if we're going to go advertise, we don't go advertising in event. I'm trying to think of some of the eventing magazines, but we don't do our hunter jumper show in an eventing magazine. Why? You know, why do we not advertise Santa Anita in one of those publications? I think that that's very important. Like you were saying, we have to worry about first, and then, you know, worry about the promotion outside of that for bigger championships.
Yeah, and it's a learning curve, like the sport of equestrian, hunter jumpers, that's what show jumping, that's what we're doing, but all the other ones too, we're still in that learning phase. I think, like, our sport, like, can relate to, like, Formula 1 because of the speed and everything like that. I think everybody relates that the closest to show jumping, especially the premium aspect of it as well. And everybody's like trying to emulate those things, and they've done a really good job at promoting it. But I think the key difference is everybody can get in a car and feel that adrenaline if they want to. Not everybody can get on a horse. So that's why it's really important to establish our existing fan base, make sure they're catered to it, and make sure they're giving the experience they expect. And then the quantity of our spectators at the event would grow. I think we can both agree that spectators are necessary for certain events, not all events. And because those events have to be prepared for them. And if they are prepared for them, then it's absolutely necessary, and it creates like an invaluable atmosphere to the event. And it's just really interesting to hear the different perspectives and everything. We hope everybody has enjoyed hearing our perspective of why some events we have spectators, and why some events we have few spectators, and why some events we have no spectators. We hope everybody joins us and continues to follow Horse Show 360 podcast on all of our platforms. You can watch full episode on our Horse Show 360 podcast YouTube channel. We hope you all subscribe to that. You can follow us on Instagram at Horse Show 360 to see short clips throughout the week. You can also follow us on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and all of the above. So we hope you guys enjoy tuning in. Tune in next week to see and listen to our 5-star recap in episode 9 of our LA Santa Anita 5-star. You're not going to want to miss that. It was an unbelievably incredible event. So we hope you all are enjoying tuning in. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today about
Thank you.
speaking about spectators. And we hope to see you all soon. Thanks so much.